Well, Ricky, since you're a biologist, I have a question for you that's been bugging me, and I've had numerous arguments with people about it. So, does a gobbler poop in the shape of a J, or is it just a puddle?
It is in the shape of a J.
I knew it.
So you have lost sleep over that question.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've had several heated arguments over it. That is for sure. People swear that I'm pulling their leg.
What causes that?
It's just the anatomy. Hens lay eggs and gobblers don't.
Well, you know what? That's the only letter I like seeing in the woods.
Yeah.
And I don't mind looking at that, Jay.
Yep.
Well, you know, we see a lot of that out there in the woods and stuff. And Scott and I have gone by, and I was like, man, it's like, yeah, I've heard that. My grandmother didn't believe it. And
Yeah, I told my grandmother, and I can't tell you what she said. She's like, I'm serious, Abby. That's
Yeah, like when I'm teaching kids, if I'm doing like a little outreach event or something, I always tell them, remember the J like a Jake, like an immature
that's a good way
gobbler.
to do it.
So.
Yeah.
Well, now we can officially tell everybody that we've argued with.
That
I've
is
got it
the
from
truth.
a biologist. That is the truth.
Welcome to the Challenge Podcast, brought to you by Raider Concealment.
Another good thing when you're scouting, talk about the size of the turkey foot. When you're looking at a gobbler's pretty easy. His middle toe's going to be quite a bit longer.
Yep.
Now, when you got a Jake, is he going to be more similar to a hen or a gobbler?
More to a gobbler,
but a little bit smaller.
Yeah, potentially.
You might kind of look at it and go,
maybe
that's got to be. A Jake.
Because that toe is already going to be elongated, even if it's not quite as much of an impression or something. It's going to look more like a gobbler.
When you're scouting, what's the kind of top 2-3 things you're looking for?
Yeah, tracks is number one. That's the easy. Of course, if it's just rained, it can be tough. But yeah, tracks, poo obviously, and then the terrain, kind of like where you're at.
Is there something out there that you kind of see and you go, man, a turkey spent a lot of time in here?
Yeah. There's a sign I like to see when the turkeys are out there. It's like when they're in strut and the tips of their wings rub that dirt.
Yeah, the strut marks.
I mean, that's like, oh, they're here. And then you see that dust bowl sitting there, and it's
found that the other day.
This time of the year in the South, you get a lot of prescribed fire, and so if I'm hunting a place that I'm not familiar with, I look for burns. Yeah. Turkeys love to hang out in burns.
Well, that kind of brings me to something. We talked earlier. You're heading to Colorado. Everything being what it is right now, trips on. But when you're hunting new ground, Brad and I kind of had this conversation the other day. How are you approaching new ground, public land? You've never been on it. Maybe looked at it on the OnX. You've done your homework back home. But when you get there, how are you going about looking at that new ground?
Well, go to those areas that maybe I've picked out from an aerial photo or something like that, and then looking for some of those same signs that we just mentioned.
What are you looking for on an aerial, though?
Typically, you don't always know out there, of course, if it's like a ponderosa pine type of a plant community, and not too high up in the alpine. But so that'd be the first. Typically, look for ponderosa pine habitat, and then a little more open. Maybe some drainages that are a little bit more distinct with maybe some moving water. Right.
I was going to ask you, is it the same? For me, I'm looking for water whenever I'm hunting turkeys.
Right.
But especially here in the South, for roost trees, I'm looking for big trees, either on or very close to water. Yep. Is that kind of the same way you?
Yeah, I would definitely do that. That's something I'll be looking for out there where we're going. Never been there before, so.
What do you think, Greg? What do you do when you're scouting new ground?
Well, like I said, I'm looking for those tracks and those little marks there, but of course, the poo. Yeah. Looking for the J and looking for under a tree.
Looking
you got
for a good place to scatter your corn.
That's right, man. And then I got to bury it. Oh wait, don't say that. That's not good.
Oh, but he's not a game warden.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So then you take the corn, and what you do is.
Do turkeys like corn?
Yes, they do.
You're on the right track then,
That's why you can't put it out there, huh?
You got to be careful, though. We can't have none of that going on, though.
No, but I have gone out like a couple of weeks prior and maybe did a couple, preliminary calls to see if you get any kind of response, to opening day and see what's going on, see if there's any tracks.
Do you ever try to roost them?
Yeah, well, not off season. I mean, if I get a response. But if I'm there in the evening,
That's what I mean.
I'll stay there till dark. If I roost one, I'm in there till it's pitch
Right,
dark, and then
that's
I'm going to get out of there, leave everything I can, take the camera and my gun, but pretty much everything else, because I'm coming right back there in the morning.
You remember when it was in Wyoming, the
Yeah.
three of us were there, and you talk about roosting a bird. We had
Right.
a bird, Ricky. I mean, he didn't start gobbling until, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes before day. We thought it was pretty much over. And then it was like a train coming. I mean, he was hollering every call we gave him until he got almost within gun range, and he flew up right in our face.
Oh, wow.
And
it's
we were hunting
gobbled
out there
his
with
head off.
Brant, where we met you last year.
Yep.
And we waited till it got pitch dark, and exactly what Greg said. We took the camera. I think you left the tripod, and we took the guns out, and we belly crawled out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Wow.
he was
gobbling
the whole time. We pulled
Wow.
up in the truck, and he was still going. I don't know if he shut up the whole night.
Wow.
Yep.
So then you think you're late, right? Because, he's already awake, he's gobbling, but we crawled right in there. I mean, what was the tree?
20
It
yards,
wasn't far.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he ended up pitching down and getting on a lip behind us. So, Ricky, I don't think there's any better time to kind of help all of us become better turkey hunters. We're all sitting here. I'm going to learn something from you. Hopefully, you're going to learn something from me. Brad's going to learn something from Greg, vice versa. So, I think one of the best strategies you can do if you have the time and are available to do it, it's not always, the case, but roosting a bird. And it was surprising to me that you said you never roosted a bird.
Yes, I've never roosted a bird before.
Intentionally.
Intentionally, yeah. I've tried a time or two,
Yeah.
and in the east, typically birds don't gobble as much in
Right.
the evening as they do out west.
Right.
They're not as vocal that time of the day. I have killed a bird going to roost before, actually in Texas. But yeah, I have never actually roosted a bird and knew where one was exactly the night before.
So I think a lot of guys, and this is more old school thought, I think, but back in the day, everybody wanted to do that morning hunt. And I know there's
Yeah.
some states, Missouri's one, they close down at 1 o'clock, so you can't hunt in the afternoons. But
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that I think now this hunt might not be quite as exciting, coming in, gobbling and strutting, acting the fool and all that as the morning. But I think you probably can kill more birds in the afternoon just because they're lonely. They want to kind of get back up with those hens before they go to roost.
Yeah, it's possible. I've had some outstanding afternoon hunts. Not typically quite that late. Usually it's mid-afternoon, maybe between 1:30 and 3:30
Yeah, I
or
think
something.
anytime after lunch, you're liable to get on a lonely bird.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I would say the vast majority of birds are still killed early on because they are more vocal that first, hour of daylight for sure than they are the rest of the
Well,
day.
a lot of guys, that, if they're not gobbling, Brad, it's hard to sit out there.
It's
Well,
tough.
I'm the same way. I think I've killed more birds mid-morning to mid-afternoon,
Yeah.
but I prefer to hunt in the mornings just for the fact you love hearing them gobble.
Yeah.
You love seeing them fly down and strut and all the talking. And, that's half the fun to me is calling and hearing one gobble in response and trying to, follow them around and outwit the hens and all that. So, there again is, since you're a biologist, I was wondering a little bit of behind the scenes of why that happens. I mean, why do they gobble more in the morning? Why do they, the hens, lead them away from if they hear you calling, that type of thing? Just explain a little bit about what the birds actually do in the nature. I mean, we're trying to get them to do something different, right?
Yeah, we're actually trying to do a 180
Reverse.
from what they naturally
Right.
do. Yeah, I mean, in most bird species, the reason why the male is colorful and does the displaying is because they're supposed to draw the females to them. It's no different with turkeys. So when we try to call a gobbler to us, we're doing the opposite of that. Most people, that turkey hunt know that, but yeah, I mean, it's early morning. I mean, they're trying to round up, their hens. It's also a territorial thing. They do have leks. They call them leks. They're basically different groups, and they have kind of their little territories.
Okay.
And so they're not just gobbling for the hens. They're also gobbling for other groups of birds that are within
Other
hearing
gobblers.
distance as well.
So we had a scenario this weekend where I shot what we thought was a dominant bird, and other birds, there was two more. They didn't gobble that much. So when that boss bird's gone, this is just obviously an opinion I'm asking here, or maybe you got some statistical facts or something, but how long does it typically take for another bird to come in there and take over that? those hens or that territory or whatever?
So
or is that
actually,
even true?
researchers right now are actually learning a lot about that as we speak in some of the recent studies. And it does not happen very quickly, actually. So there is a pecking order that the gobblers, work through, actually constantly, really.
Right.
I mean, from the time that that they're born, a lot of them are siblings.
Right.
And so they're always in competition, and so to speak. And they not only the dominant bird's the dominant bird, not only because of what they're doing, but also because the hens are for whatever reason prefer that bird. And when that is interrupted by shooting that dominant tom, the hens have to sort back through the list as well. And this is still theory. Not all this has been put into publication and stuff. But what they're seeing is that delay is longer. It's not immediate. They're not gonna just start mating with that next gobbler, later that day or the next.
The hens are maybe setting the pecking order because they're preferring one gobbler over the other. It's not like he's coming in and I'm the boss.
Well, I think I'm not sure. It's kind of simultaneous. I wouldn't say that the hens are setting it, but once that
they have a part in it.
They have a part in selecting which. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yep.
That's neat.
I was just going to ask, does it have anything to do with the length of the beard or anything like that? Do we know that?
We don't know that.
Well, because you have the Jake's got a little beard, but they don't like them. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, well, Jakes are not sexually mature.
Oh, they couldn't
Jakes are not.
anyway.
Yeah, they have to be. Yeah, two plus year olds.
Now, have you asked a gobbler why they let those Jakes run them around like they do?
That's a great question. I don't.
There's more of them.
I'm not really sure why. Yeah, more
Safety
of
in
them
numbers?
typically.
Yeah.
I would say is probably why that's happening. Because usually it's not a group of gobblers when it's happening. It's usually a single bird
Right.
and then a group of Jakes.
Right.
Yeah,
At least in my observation.
Right.
So
Most
frustrating.
of the times. Yeah, they ruin a lot of hunts. But you were saying something earlier, and we didn't really get into it, but there was some radio collared or GPS collared turkeys, and then you had some hunters wearing GPS, and you kind of saw how they reacted to the calling, the hunting pressure. Tell me a little bit of that.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of projects done, one in Louisiana, and I think the other may have been in Texas. But they had GPS. They had GPSs that they gave the hunters when they checked into this WMA. It was a public land hunt, and they already had a project going on with radio collared, GPS collared birds on the WMA, and they were able to track, in real time, essentially what the interaction was between the birds and the hunters, and what they, how they moved around the landscape during the hunt.
So what did they learn from that?
Turkey hunters like roads. Number one.
They like keeping it easy.
And two, that the birds definitely do respond to the pressure pretty distinctly. They obviously a few hunters were successful,
Right.
but they were probably the more patient hunters.
Yeah.
And they walked further.
Yeah. Well, you need to get away from the crowds, away from the roads, and more than likely you're going to get into some birds that are a little bit easier to call.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did they learn anything else on this, or that was their primary goal, was to just see how birds reacted to hunting pressure?
Well, that was just one little piece of that larger project. They were obviously looking at other things, habitat use and some other stuff.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that, they would see some of those birds after the hunter was long gone from the site, 3 or 4 hours after they had left, that there would actually be a bird go to the exact location from where the hunter had been at one point calling.
Did they radio collar any hens to let you know that gobbler was with hens? That's why he didn't call.
I believe in that study they just had gobblers radioed. I don't know if they had any hens on the landscape.
But it just goes to prove that bird knew you were there. He heard you. If you wait him out, most guys ain't waiting 3 hours. I'm not waiting 3 hours. But,
right, especially if he's not gobbling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually some other interactions where they saw the birds were very close to hunters and they weren't gobbling. They had no idea they were there.
And they end up spooking them.
Yeah, they either bump them or never know that they were there at one point in time before they got up to leave.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me into another question that I had, which was, is there any studies that have been done to determine why one morning they're gobbling their head off and the next morning they do not make a peep? I mean, is it barometric pressure, or is it, hunter pressure? Is it just...
Yeah, so pressure definitely has an impact on gobbling. A rising pressure typically is
gobbling.
more gobbling, lower pressure, falling pressure. They're not going to gobble as much. But there's also some other factors involved there. Density dependent gobbling, that's what they call it. Well documented in quail, bobwhite quail. The more birds, the more calling.
The more they gobble.
And so if you think about that too, from I was telling you about those groups of birds on the landscape.
Right.
You know, if there's not another bird over there gobbling, there's really no need for them to gobble if there is one there. So
Right.
so that also plays into fact into that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess that's why sometimes you have to get them to shot gobble.
Yeah, and then
So
they
you know
are
that.
individuals too, which we
Right.
forget sometimes. We try to put them all in one box. And
What's-
some birds do just gobble more than others.
Now you hear shot gobbling all the time, and guys that haven't hunted much or just getting into hunting, that can be a great way to get a bird to gobble without actually giving up, quote unquote, your location with a hen call, and you don't have that bird running in
Right.
on you
Using
before you can-
locator call.
right before you get set up. So you're using a locator call, an owl, a crow. I mean, I've even got a peacock, and it works great out in the Midwest. It is loud. But what is the thought? What makes a turkey, a gobbler, shot gobble at that noise? I mean, my dad used to take a little horn and
Yeah, so it's the same. It's within the same sound frequency of a gobble. Train horn is another one.
yep.
Yeah.
And so owl hoot is in the same frequency band, so the same range of sound. That's the primary reason why we think they gobble at some of those other things.
There was back when you were just blowing like owl and crow, people thought they're just showing their dominance. They're just they're the boss bird or something, which I don't believe that. But
Probably not.
My dad years ago, we grew up hunting a lot of public land, and he drove up on a guy, and he was already getting ready to go hunt, and he saw him later that morning, and he asked him if he had any luck. He said, I had one gobble over here. He said, I'd have killed him if I could have took the car door in. Every time I slammed the door, he gobbled. He said, every time I called to him, he never would gobble. He said, if I could carry that car door in.
Yeah.
It was funny the other day, we were hunting on live Facebook, and David knocked the camera over, and it hit the ground and just went, kush, and the bird gobbled.
Yeah.
And he ain't gobbled in, probably 5 or 6 minutes, that
Yeah.
last few calls we threw out there. It's
I
just,
remember years ago, I was hunting a bird, and he was pretty close to a dirt road, and it was pretty early in the morning. Me and buddy of mine that were on this turkey, we heard the truck coming from a distance, and he'd hit these bumps on this rough dirt road,
had
and there'd
that
be
too.
something in the bed of his truck, and every time it,
yeah.
just bang, bang, and he was gobble. He wasn't
had
even,
the exact same
wasn't even
thing
gobbling
happen.
at us, but he was gobbling at the truck every time he hit a bump.
Yep. I've had the
pretty funny.
exact same thing. So, Greg, what are you taking in your turkey vest, as far as locator calls? Because, a lot of guys, especially when they're getting started hunting, you can load a vest down, as you know. I mean, turkey hunters are terrible about just, if it'll fit in the pack, take it. But what are some of the essentials you're taking in?
Well,
Other than your corn.
Yeah, other than the corn. See, I'm just listening to this because this is all fascinating because you can relate to the multiple gobbles because like when we're in Kansas, you've got Jurassic Park going on with all the different, they call, they don't call, all that stuff. But as for me, I'm the simplest hunter that's ever been out there.
I can
take
vouch
a
for that.
Pistol Creek call. And a
pot
diaphragm,
call. Yep.
and that's it. And that's all I ever use. But the thing with, I'm a sound guy. I'm a sound engineer, so I know that they hear these certain frequencies. And so, like with my mouth call, I can hit it a higher note with my tongue,
Right.
or try a lower. And I'll try those different frequencies and see which one makes them fire, But it's just fascinating.
So you don't
to
use a
listen to
locator call at all?
No, I don't have an owl. I don't have. I don't have anything.
You don't take your
I just
guitar
go
in the
in there,
woods and try to
go in there in
hit
the morning
notes?
and
There you go.
something like that.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
But
That was
I
pretty
haven't
good,
had to do
actually.
that because I just really know where I'm hunting. I know
Yeah.
where they're always down at this bottom. I had 5 or 6 of them screaming like crazy this other day, but none of them came. Well, one did come out. Should I tell that story?
Why not? We've
Well-
learned from our mistakes, buddy.
What happened was, it got late. I actually sat in the woods till 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
I actually started getting out at
From
2:30.
daylight?
From daylight.
Wow.
I actually started getting out of the woods at 2:30, so I was back to the camper at 3. But I still had turkeys, 2 of them back down in that bottom, still firing. And so my rule of thumb is I'll do some calls. I wait 30 minutes
From the last call.
before I move. before I get out of there, because like you say, and you posted something that said the other day, they might not
be gobbling.
Gobble. They might, but and I've heard they'll circle, and come in different ways, so it's like you don't know, but I did a little putt on my Pistol Creek, what's the bad one, putt or cluck?
Cluck.
Putt is the bad one?
Putt's
Okay,
bad,
I did the cluck. Whatever. And I heard one down at the bottom where I'm hunting do that. And I thought, wow, okay, now I thought maybe that's a hen.
Right.
So I did it again. It responded, so there's my 30-minute window.
Gotta
Well, I
start
got
all
up
over.
at 20 minutes.
Yeah.
What happened,
I
Greg?
walked over to, I'm about 10 feet in off the wood line. So I normally get up, I'll take a step and look and binocular across the edge and down in the bottoms because I'm on like a peak, and then I'll go a step further, and I stand there for a good
Let me
while.
interrupt you. When you're using your binoculars, do you have those glasses in?
Yes.
Or?
And I've got them tweaked so they
So
work.
what is up? What's going on with those glasses?
You want me to explain that too?
Yeah, explain that.
Because
Because I'm looking at you and I'm trying not to say
that there's
nothing.
no lens right there.
I mean, what is going
Because
on?
my
there?
eyes are messed up.
Oh.
See, this one's right,
not all that's
and this
messed
one's
up.
not. This one needs
truth.
help, and this one doesn't. So I just knocked the lens out, and I can see perfect.
That's how you fix that problem, huh?
That's right. So now I know
right.
that's a real turkey.
Because I'm sitting here looking at you, I kind of like to look guys in the eye, and I'm like, does he know he's missing the lens?
Yeah, see, I can scratch my eye without even moving the
Oh, now,
glasses.
see, I like that. Oh, he touched his eye.
Uh-oh.
no.
Oh,
Well-
sanitizer.
Yeah. Anyway, I take a step and I wait for a good while, and I'm looking across there, and I take another step. Now at this point, I'm at my last step, and I still have limbs,
Right.
but my legs, you can probably see my
Those
legs.
pines along there.
And I'm looking across to my left, and then I'd look across right to my right, and there's the gobbler standing there 30 yards from me, and it was probably one that did the cluck or the putt
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Yeah, but when I looked, I turned around. I think he saw me, and he walked right
Yeah,
into
he
the
gave you
woods.
the putt.
And so I waited because there's a big tree falling right there, so I know it's really thick. Well, I know how good they can see because years ago I thought, okay, that turkey's past me. I go to raise my gun, and he flies off.
Oh, yeah.
So they see really well. But I got back in there, and I just grabbed my call, see if I could get him to, maybe he thought he,
Calm down.
mistake something, and come back because I know their brain ain't, that big.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did, and he just, all that stuff, it's more or less like, whatever,
Screw you.
I ain't coming back, so, well, there he was, 30 yards
Yeah,
away
and you
from
didn't
me.
stick to
big
your rule.
rope, and I left 10 minutes early.
That's actually a good rule. I like that rule. I might have to start.
Yeah,
Usually when
30
me and my dad would hunt, and I call it cold calling. You walk and walk, and you can't strike a bird. We'll just find a good spot. Setup is everything, right, with turkeys.
Yep.
And we'd sit down in a good area where we found some scratching or maybe some of the jays out there in the road or something. And we'd call, we'd set up for an hour because I can't tell you how many times we'd get up inside that hour and, just be a little lip on the hill and there'd be one running down the road or something. Mm-hmm. So, but that's another thing, a good point I'd like to talk about is setup. I know I'm not going to tell you how I know, but don't lose the high ground on a turkey because it is very difficult to call them down that hill. And if they're already up there, you need to try to get up there with them. Would you agree with that if you can without spooking them?
Yeah, I'd say in most cases that's probably, definitely better to be high, be above them.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you are in the South, that's really not an issue. But,
Well,
in the,
where we are, we got some pretty rolling
yeah,
hills.
the Piedmont up this way, the
Yeah.
fall line, there's definitely some hills for sure.
Another thing I think, guys, when they sit down, they don't think about the tree they're on. Everybody wants to get on a big tree that's, at least as wide as they are, if not wider. But they may have another tree just right out here in front of them. They're like, well, that's good cover. They got a bush here. But when you go to, you want that turkey to come in this way. But if you go to swing and your
Right.
gun's hitting that bush, basically you can, shoot from 11 to 1 there, and that's it. So
Yeah.
that's another thing I think we've learned from just years of experience is make sure you can pretty much shoot a 180 out in front of you. And, if you put stuff up in front of you, if you got time, put it down lower so when you get your gun up on your knee, you're just skimming the
interfere.
top of it.
Yeah, forecover, background cover.
yeah.
I mean, all that's very important. And then the vision, like you said, being able to, catch a bird coming in silent before he sees you, kind of a thing. Make sure you're not going to get caught.
And the
moving
more
your
cover
hand
you
or
got,
something.
you can get away with moving or reaching for another call, and
Yeah.
also you want to obviously to us, but maybe not everybody. You want to be in the shade.
Yeah, absolutely. That may be the biggest key is make sure you're in the shade, especially when the sun's up.
Because they see movement really well.
Yeah, and it's amazing
Yeah.
how exaggerated your movements are when you're in the sun. Even just a little flash of sun.
That's right.
You catch that hand moving or something,
Yeah.
and that'll give you up in a hurry. But that's just some of the things.
Yeah,
that,
and if you have decoys, if you hunt with decoys, not being, if you know the bird's like going to be coming down like a road or something, not being beyond,
in line with
don't
that.
be in line with the vision of that. Of
Right,
that
you don't want the
decoy.
decoys in line with you and the bird.
And their
you wanna
side,
be off to the
correct,
side.
yep,
Right, I had that
exactly. You
happen
wanna
on
be
a big deer in Kansas.
It's gonna be perpendicular, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Do you believe you'd rather use decoys or go without decoys?
I don't have a lot of success with decoys. It's probably not good for a video camera, like what you guys do a lot of. But
we like killing them. I don't care if there's a decoy out there or not.
Yeah, you just don't get a lot of good video footage
Yeah,
sometimes
they
when they're
can't come
coming
in
in
and stomp
looking.
a decoy if it's not there. Right?
Exactly. I have killed a couple, either myself or somebody I'm hunting with, over a decoy. But for the most part, I do not use them. I don't know why that is. Maybe another reason why I don't kill a lot of turkeys first thing in the morning. I don't roost them and I don't use decoys.
Right.
Maybe that's why I kill them late. I don't know, but
I think a lot of it depends on the terrain that you're hunting too, because Scott and I, when we hunt out west, we use them quite a bit because it's more open.
yeah.
But it's probably just as likely that they'll see it and run and go the other way. I mean, it doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, I have seen birds hang up, kind
Right.
of flank a decoy set more often than not. The times that I have used them,
Yeah.
I've seen them kind of hurt more than help. That's just my experience.
I would say 50-50 for us, but
Yeah.
a lot of times if it's real thick in there, I want them looking.
Yeah.
Looking for it,
That
right.
I got to go a little further. I got to go
Right.
a little further,
Yep.
but they're like 50 yards. Boom! I see the hen, the jake, whatever. I came this far. You can't come over here to me, and I've seen that play out. But
Yeah.
we killed. David killed his bird opening morning, and opening mornings are always the worst because you're always forgetting something. The
Yeah.
lengths
You
on
oversleep.
the tree arm and not on your tripod or
Leave your gun
whatever.
at home.
Forget your
Well,
gun.
David-
Forget your gun.
Yeah, Brad went turkey hunting the other day, Greg, and forgot his gun.
He did that with his bow.
I know, right? He's just that
I had
talented,
a good
man.
excuse, but it's still
A
just
good
an
excuse. What's one thing you need when you're going turkey
I did
hunting?
remember the camera.
You
though.
need your gun.
You need a gun. You need
Yeah.
a gun. And when you're going bow hunting for mule deer,
You need
Yeah,
your
need
you
a-
need,
need a
you
bow.
need arrows. Yeah.
and I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying?
decoy set.
We're talking about
You're
decoys,
talking about decoys.
but I got a
Yeah.
decoy.
Oh, David forgot his decoys. But the
David
way it
forgot
worked
his
out,
decoy.
that bird ended up coming. He thought we were in the food plot, and we were between him and the food plot, and he walked right in our lap.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it worked out good. That we had the decoys out. It might have went the other way. What you got, Greg?
Well, I got a little decoy, and she's been with me for many years. She just folds up and goes right in my pack, and she goes out there every time with me. Now, it is a hen, and she doesn't realize, and I don't tell her, how responsible she is for as many deaths that has been because of her. And I named her Lucy.
I would like to see
Lucy
that
the
decoy.
decoy.
That
And
has
I
to
named her
be
Lucy
one
because when the
sad-looking
wind
decoy.
blows, she
gets
gets Lucy for the boys. But she's proud of what she does, so I let her sit out there. And every turkey I've killed has come to that decoy.
I don't think she cares. Now, these are one of these old flambeau roll-up things made of foam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
Left
hand in
on
there,
there.
pop it open,
You got like one eye working, and
and it just sits in there in the wind. It just does great.
I tell you, Greg will hunt with some of the 1950 whatever,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the gloves, I mean, there's no fingers in them. They just all come apart. And so
I
it looks
get
like
a-
he's got 10 fingers.
I get a pair a year, and then they just get
A year?
shredded.
Come on.
They get shredded. Well, if they're still got some flap on them, I might keep them another year. But like the ones I got right now with turkeys.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm
there's
picky with
plenty,
my
I
gloves.
got plenty
Yeah.
of fingertips open for
Yeah.
whatever.
A friend of mine,
Touch his face again.
he's a world-class turkey hunter. He believes in like a flock of turkeys, like
Really?
five,
Like a duck hunter.
5 decoys. Like
Yeah. Wow.
he said he's never had. He claims that he's never had birds shy away from a full, kind of like a full flock.
Wow.
Because he said it's kind of a movement thing to him, because whenever that bird is moving, when you have multiple objects, it looks like they're moving. If there's just one,
Yeah.
It doesn't give that effect.
Different angle.
That's
That
right.
may be a good point.
Maybe confidence in numbers or something.
Maybe,
There's a bunch of birds out
maybe
there.
that as well. I don't know. The most I've ever tried is 4 at one time.
Yeah, we've
I
done
think
that a few times.
3, I think.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we've put them together. I mean, we've had
Yeah,
3 or 4.
we'll do. One thing I like to do, but you got to learn what the birds are doing. You may not throw it out there, but you put a breeding hen and then a gobbler. I mean, a jake next to it, and then another hen out there maybe feeding. Get pretty good reactions to that, especially out in Kansas. Different world out there where they can see so fur.
Well, Ricky, the other day we had a guest on and we had a topic we discussed, but since you are a biologist, I'd like to get a little bit more official view. We were talking about, especially here in Georgia in the South, to us the last couple of years, it doesn't seem like have as many birds as we used to. Now, it could be just that we're not hunting the right areas or whatever, but the consensus amongst all of us was we all noticing it. And, of course, Georgia's got a 3-bird limit and has forever. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious if there's been any studies or what's your opinion of, are we, in a down or is it on the way up? And should we change the limit, change the dates? What are your opinion on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so, well, it's not an opinion. We definitely have less birds than we used to have. And that's not just Georgia. That's the southeastern region of
everywhere.
the country.
We're hearing it all over.
Yeah, we've had a decline for many years now. Kind of a gradual decline. I would say we really knew about it or kind of paid attention to it probably in the late 2000s.
How come they haven't changed the limits, and what's the reason?
Well, we didn't have any data yet. There's a lot of research had not been done, and so that's actually what the last 8 or so years that's why we have a lot more new research is to kind of inform those decisions that we didn't have. During the restoration of the wild turkey, starting back really heavy in the 80s and 90s, we put birds in places with decent habitat, and then they exploded.
Right.
So we were always on that upslope. Wildlife populations of any kind in new areas, they'll fill those voids quickly. So we were hunting turkeys in a rapid increase, in a rapid population increase, and so we have these liberal bag limits and liberal seasons because it didn't seem to matter. And then, coming into the 2000s, that started to turn. And then we still kept seeing an increase in harvest numbers through those years, those mid 2000s, but we definitely were starting to see less poults per hen.
What do they determine was causing that?
Well, there's a lot of things that are in the works right now that could,
theories.
Well, their theories. There's a lot of data that's will be coming out. That's probably going to speak to a lot of that. But habitat's part of it.
Speak to it now.
Speak to it now, right? I wish we could.
Is it coyotes? Is it fire ants? Is it molded corn on the ground?
It's not fire ants. I'll go ahead. I'll tell you that. And it's probably not even coyotes. Coyotes are a predator, and they will get a turkey if they can, but they're not good at catching turkeys.
Right. Unless it's a poult.
Yeah, unless it's a poult, but even then, they're not finding a lot of any kind of bird remains in coyote scat really at all of any kind. But yeah, so nest predators are a big deal. Bobcats, raccoons, possums. Mesomammals is what they're categorized as, kind of mid-sized. Possums, raccoons, snakes are a huge predator of nests.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so turkeys nest on the ground. So it's tough. It's tough to make a go of it just because of their ecology, but.
So what can a guy, owns land or leases land, how can he help with the turkey numbers?
Yeah, so if you lease land, that can be tough because, usually there's a landowner that may or may not allow you to do other things. But more active land management, really of any kind, within reason is going to be better. But open forest, less woody cover. Where it doesn't belong, mainly up on the hills,
like
more
privet and things like that, or
well, that's a non-native. We definitely don't want that. But just in general, sweet gums and cherries and
burning's good.
Burning is the number one. That's the number one land management tool that we can use.
Why do turkeys prefer that?
Well,
they like their food cooked.
Well, they're adapted to fire. historically in the southeast, fire would be on the landscape in any given place, every 2 to 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
So we've fragmented the landscape and with development and stuff, and and for many years, obviously suppressed fire, actively even suppressed fires.
Right.
Now we're controlling it, so we don't have the big fires they do out west.
That's right. Thankfully, we do still have a little bit of a prescribed fire culture in the southeast, and between Florida and Georgia, the first and second states in the country for prescribed fire application.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I knew
Florida's-
Georgia was up there.
Georgia's number 2, about 1.3 million acres a year prescribed fire. And Florida's a little over 2 million a year.
Wow.
But yeah, prescribed fire, more not completely herbaceous. You want a little bit of woody cover, but you want it in check. You don't want it to be in the mid-story. And
Right.
so
every 2 or 3 years may burn the same spot.
That's right. Yep. And so that typically will provide better brooder and habitat, nesting cover, and then you're also at the same time kind of reducing some of that predator habitat because they're much more tied to woody, shrubby type cover and habitat, creek bottoms, hardwoods, that kind of thing.
Has there been any conversation that you know of about reducing the bag limit for a few years?
There's a lot of conversations about that in many states. They just had regulation changes in South Carolina.
Right.
They did not reduce the bag limit, but they did.
You can only kill one bird the first week.
The first 10 days.
First 10 days.
Yep, and they did go back to a split season for the Low Country and the Upstate, and they also changed the bag. They did change the bag limit for out-of-state hunter licensed hunter
Cut back on that
holder.
a bit.
It's only it's 3 birds for resident and only 2 birds for non-resident.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama, I think, what do you kill, 5 over there?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's 5. Yeah,
I mean, there's a river that separates us part of the way, but
that's right.
5 birds just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, so season dates and bag limits are being discussed. I don't know where Georgia's headed. We do have a very liberal season length of season, and 3 birds is a pretty liberal bag limit as well. We can't control everything on the landscape, but we can control when the season starts and how many of them we shoot.
Right.
And I think that there is a need to do a little bit of that.
So once you start talking about it, how long before, you bring this up and then they talk about it for 2 or 3 years? I mean, how long does it take to get
well,
this
it's been
thing
brought
changed?
up. I think once they make a decision, it probably won't take that long to get it
Do you
changed.
think they're probably going to happen? They're probably going to make that decision to go to 2 birds?
I suspect they are. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be a season change or a bag limit change or both, combination of both. I don't know what those changes would be, but I would say that
Change is coming.
Change is coming.
I don't care if they. I mean, I'd rather them leave the season length. I mean, by 1st of May, it's so hot down here. You really don't. They could take those last 15 days out, and I probably wouldn't miss them.
Actually, it needs to go the other way.
Yeah. Really?
Actually, honestly, from an ecology standpoint, so we're killing one of the theories is that we're killing some of the birds too early. And I was telling you
And they don't
earlier.
have time
I was
to
telling you
breed.
earlier about if you kill the dominant tom, then they have to reshuffle everything, and you have to basically get a new order before they will go back to breeding.
Right.
So we're killing too many birds too early.
Before they bred.
And then by the time they figure out the shuffling,
And so then you're delaying
they
and you're
miss-
elongating
miss the
you're
window.
elongating what would be the breeding cycle would be more concise. Now you're spreading it out a little bit more. But
so you're thinking they're going to back it up?
they're not going to back it up in Georgia because it does go so late. What I think they would do is just take a week or 2 off the front end and keep the rest of it the same. And I'll be honest with you, I've hunted some places with little or no pressure, and birds in May, Mother's Day, will gobble just as much if they haven't been hunted and don't have some of those dynamics of a lot of the hunting pressure than they do the end of March.
Wow.
Yeah.
So hotter than fire, no doubt. But I think that if we went that way, I think some hunters would be surprised.
Well, they are on fire right now in Georgia.
They are.
I don't know if you know that, but
Yes.
I think
Except if I'm going hunting with you.
Yeah, then it's crickets out there. Brad Frost Luck.
Frost
right,
Luck.
Greg?
Oh, wow.
Well, hey, I've learned
6 or
something.
7 of them firing just the other morning. It's just like
I've
you
not
said,
heard a
all the
gobble.
birds, and then
Well, you did hear gobbles the morning you forgot your gun.
I forgot my gun. He did hear him way, way, way off. But
Yeah,
not,
he keeps saying way, way off, so he won't feel bad that they were just like right there on the property line. But well, hey guys, I learned some stuff. Did you learn anything, Greg?
I sure did. I'm telling you, all the different things that we were talking about here. As a matter of fact, I would probably watch this podcast because it was very interesting.
Well, have you subscribed to the channel, Greg?
I have.
Okay,
I think I have. Let me check my book.
Ricky, I appreciate you driving down, man. We could talk all night about turkeys. But,
Enjoyed it.
and we may do that.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey guys, Brad Frost from Raider Concealment, and I'd like to encourage everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like button and also ring the notification bell so that you'll get all the updates for our upcoming videos.